Hey y'all, good afternoon or good morning depending on when you're watching this. We are going to chat a little bit today about emotional intelligence. This is actually one of my favorite things to cover. I think it's, I don't know, nerdy, but so fun to be able to think about these things in a way that you probably have never thought about. So what is emotional intelligence and what do you know about it? So what is it? I mean, what does it mean to you to be emotionally intelligent? Do you have friends that you think are emotionally intelligent or emotionally unintelligent, where maybe you feel like they don't handle their feelings very well? Emotional intelligence is the ability to identify and manage your own emotions and the emotions of others. It's generally said to include three main skills: emotional awareness, the ability to harness emotions and apply them to tasks like thinking or problem solving, and the ability to manage emotions, which includes regulating your own emotions, cheering up or calming down other people. So that's a lot to take in, right? And it seems like, oh yeah, I can do that. I know how I feel. But the reality is that you probably don't always, and you've probably interacted with other people where you think, why are you acting this way? Or why can't you control yourself in this situation? Or why are you angry at me? I'm just the messenger. The ability to be aware of how you're actually feeling and how you come across to others, as well as be able to apply emotions to tasks, and then to regulate your emotions, to actually control how you feel and when it's appropriate to feel that way. You may be in a conversation with the supervisor and they may be telling you some hard things to hear, and you may want to cry or get upset or get angry. The ability to harness that emotion, the ability to control that emotion. How are you really good at helping cheer other people up? Are you really good at helping calm other people down? Can you help other people regulate their emotions? This TED Talk that I have listed below is going to be in your assignment as well. It's on compassion, but it talks about how to use your emotional intelligence better and what it can do for you. So there are 5 whole components to emotional intelligence. Self-awareness, awareness of how you feel. Self-regulation, the ability to regulate and control how you feel. Emotional motivation, the ability to be motivated. Empathy, the ability to feel deeply for others, right? To really be able to feel bad because somebody had a bad day or a bad time or is going through a rough patch. And then social skills, the ability to interact with other people. You might know some friends who you think, gosh, they are just not very aware of how their emotions are affecting other people. They get readily angry, or they're always sad and unable to control their emotions. Like, it's okay for me to be stressed about certain things, but I try not to do that in front of my children. I have an ability to control my emotions and let them out at an appropriate time in an appropriate manner. That is both awareness and regulation. It's really hard to regulate your feelings if you cannot actually be aware of your feelings. So let's talk more about self-awareness. Do you consider yourself to be an emotionally aware person? Do you feel like you always know how you're feeling and why you're feeling that way and how it may come across to others? The ability to know your own emotions, your strengths, your weaknesses, your drives, your values and goals, and recognize their impact on others while using gut feelings to guide your decision. Being aware of your own emotions is also being aware of how your emotions impact other people. In certain situations, you may find that your anger at a server in a restaurant, while maybe justified, if you act out on that in public, you may see that the people you're with are embarrassed, or the people you're with are supportive maybe, or the person that you're upset with and angry with is hurting. And recognizing the ability to be aware about how your own emotions actually impact others. And so recognizing that impact and then using your gut feeling to guide you in making decisions. Is this the right time? Is this the right place to have this conversation or to do this thing? The other thing you talk about when you talk about self-awareness, right, is that maybe you have like friends or family who you think are like, you might think to yourself, do they know how they're coming across to other people? Because they seem really angry, or they seem really bitter, or they come across as being incredibly bossy, right? And so just being aware of how your own emotions come across, but also in a moment when you're starting to say something to someone and realizing how also your feelings may impact them, and recognizing and being able to adjust that. Self-regulation involves controlling or redirecting your own disruptive emotions and impulses and adapting to changing circumstances. It is okay to be angry, upset, or sad in certain scenarios, but controlling and redirecting disruptive emotions or inappropriate emotions at the time, and sometimes even impulsive emotions, and adapting to circumstances. So I may be really upset in a certain situation, but when my children walk in the room, I may need to adapt to that changing circumstance and try to control and redirect my emotions. I'm aware that I'm upset. Me and this person are having an argument. My 12-year-old walks up to me, and I need to figure out how to adapt to that change in circumstance, because it's not appropriate maybe for me to be fighting with somebody in front of my daughter or in front of a coworker. So how can I adjust and self-regulate, be in control in that situation? Can you think of a time in which you've had to control your emotions? Maybe you were really irked about something, or maybe even super excited about something, but you came across someone who was having a really bad day and you needed to control those emotions so as not to offend them. Like maybe their cat just died and you were just about to share how you just had a really awesome day yesterday and won a small amount of money at Wendover or something. And so you wanted to share that, but realized that that wasn't the right time or place to do so. Can you think of an example in which you have not self-regulated, not been aware of how your emotions were impacting others, and someone's had to say to you later, hey, you know that when you said that or acted that way, this is how it kind of made me feel. So the next component of emotional intelligence is social skills. Social skills is being able to manage relationships and move people in the desired direction. That sounds so silly, but it's so important. So, think of an example where maybe you had a relationship with a friend and you thought, I don't want this person in my life anymore. They're toxic, they're not helping me, or I just don't have the time and they're just not that valuable. How do you manage that relationship and move that relationship in the direction you want it to go? Sometimes that's a negative direction, right? Like, I need this person out of my life, or I need to spend less time with this person. Maybe you're seeing someone and you don't feel like you need to break up with them because you're not in a committed relationship, but you're going to start to manage that relationship so that you're not seeing so much of each other, and maybe they get the picture, right? Or maybe you really like someone and you're friends with them and you want to be better friends with them. You want to spend more time with them. You want to have a stronger relationship. How do you move that relationship in that direction? The ability to manage that relationship and its growth. It's actually a really super important skill to have. How do you manage your friendship circle? Do you just cut people out when you want to? Do you say, do you just randomly tell somebody, hey, I want to be your best friend? When that worked when you were in the 3rd grade, maybe you pass them a note, hey, do you want to be BFF? And they say yes. Or do you want to be my girlfriend? And they say yes. But that's not how adults manage relationships. That's not how someone with really good social skills would manage that relationship. I think also empathy is really underrated, right? Considering other people's feelings, especially when making a decision. Part of that is also recognizing that you have impact on others, and what you say, do, and feel actually has impact on other people. So when I'm at work, before I make a decision, I try to think how other people in my office may feel about that. How might they feel if I said, we're not going to do this anymore, or we're going to start doing this and it's going to be really not a big deal to everybody, but a lot more work for one person. And so to show empathy, you can really consider other people's feelings when you're making decisions. And I think some of us have an innate skill in empathy. Some of us are just really good at being empathic. Others of us struggle to really think about how other people might feel in certain situations. So what is motivation? I consider myself a fairly motivated person, but it is an interesting concept because I remember a time in college when my best friend was really struggling to get through college. And I was in graduate school and she still hadn't graduated, and she was working at a bar and just kind of getting by, and she didn't hate school, but she just didn't really have the motivation. She couldn't really figure out what she wanted to do or why other people were able to get so much more done than she was. And, I'd say, well, just, get motivated. She's like, well, I don't know how to do that. And we had this conversation about whether or not motivation is just something you're born with. Are some people born with more motivation than others? I think so. I've certainly met some people that are highly motivated and skilled and motivated to work hard and accomplish things. And I've met other people who are very smart, intelligent, amazing people who just don't have a lot of motivation to do very much with that skill set. So how do we explain motivation? Motivation is being driven to achieve for the sake of achievement, right? It's trying to achieve something just to get it done and to say, I did that. I accomplished that thing. And there are different types of motivation. Amotivation to intrinsic motivation. So motivation can fall anywhere on a continuum, from the lack of motivation and the lack of intent to do anything, to extrinsic, to introjected regulation, to identified regulation, and finally to intrinsic motivation. So we have the lack of doing anything, and then behavior that's motivated purely by the inherent benefits you may get from doing that. Extrinsic motivation is when we are motivated to do something because we're going to avoid punishments or gain a reward. This is the kind of motivation we can often use with children. So, you might say in the 3rd grade, you did well in school because you didn't want to get in trouble at home. And if you did well in certain things, you got a pizza party. And so maybe you at home read a lot in the summertime because you were in the 5th grade and your parents gave you rewards for reading in the summer. Or you did your chores purely to avoid punishment and to make sure that you got your allowance. That's an extrinsic motivation. I'm not doing the chores because I'm really motivated by the benefit of seeing that my house is clean. That's why I do chores. But for a lot of folks, especially at an early age, it's extrinsic. I'm motivated by external forces. Introjected regulation, that is studying or behaving well because you feel pressure from within. So I might have introjected regulation to do good in school and behave only because I would feel bad if I didn't. That I have pressured myself that I would feel bad if I didn't do that. Identified regulation is recognizing the value or importance of developing a behavior or skill. So I am going to read a lot in the summer because I recognize that reading is going to be really important for me moving forward. Not just because there are inherent benefits to reading, but because I actually know I need to read. And if I don't read in the 5th grade, then the 6th grade school is going to be harder for me, right? And then there's intrinsic motivation, right? Doing something purely because you like its benefits. So maybe you practice yoga and the only reason that you do yoga is because you like the benefits that yoga brings you. It makes you feel good. You're intrinsically motivated to do it. Intrinsic motivation to learn something entails engaging in learning opportunities because you're seen as enjoyable, interesting, or relevant to meeting one's core psychological needs. The more intrinsic motivation students have, the higher their quality of life. And that has been studied for years. The more you are intrinsically motivated, that you can find a reason to be motivated in school because of the benefits school is going to bring you, rather than because you have to, or because your parents are going to get mad if you fail, or because you're going to be embarrassed if you fail, those may get you to accomplish school. You may get all B's because you're scared your parents are going to punish you if you don't. That may still work. But the reality is the more ways you can find to motivate yourself intrinsically from within, usually the higher quality of life and the happier you are. Because if you're going through life doing all these things and being motivated to do stuff because you're doing it for others, you're not going to be happy. You've got to find ways to do things that you're intrinsically motivated to do. So I want you to think about that. What are you intrinsically motivated to do? What do you do just because of the benefits it brings you and it feels good, right? That it's enjoyable, it's interesting, it's relevant, and you feel like intrinsically motivated to just do yoga. So I want you to think a little bit about that, because that's probably going to be your discussion prompt for this week. I love to do this in person. Assess your emotional intelligence using 8 competencies. So you can do this online, and maybe I'll have to post a link to it. But there are basically 8 competencies to having strong emotional intelligence. The first is choose yourself. So consequential thinking, navigating your emotions, having things that are intrinsic motivation, and optimism, right? So apply consequential thinking. Evaluate the costs and benefits of the things that you're choosing. Navigating your emotions. That means assessing, harnessing, transforming your emotions, using them as a resource. Gaining energy from personal values and commitments versus being driven by external forces. So this is what we're talking about in engaging in intrinsic motivation. You get energy from doing things that you value and honoring commitments that are important to you, instead of doing things because other people want you to, or doing things because you have to, or doing things because you're going to get punished if you don't. Right? Exercising optimism, taking a proactive perspective of hope and possibility. Thinking about how you can actually exercise being optimistic. And that doesn't mean that you have to think everything is amazing and everything is great and nothing could ever go wrong. But it does mean you need to take a proactive approach to thinking about hope and possibility when things start to seem difficult. Those are all part of choosing yourself, right? Knowing yourself. That means start recognizing patterns of behavior. Start recognizing patterns that you have in your life. I'm always really good friends with people, and then all of a sudden they don't speak to me anymore. There might be a pattern there, right? Enhance emotional literacy. What is emotional literacy? Emotional literacy is the term used to describe the ability to understand and express your feelings. It involves self-awareness and recognition of your feelings, how you manage them, how to stay calm, etc., right? Recognizing patterns of behavior, enhancing your ability to understand and express your feelings. And the last one for assessing your competency is give yourself. Increase your ability to be empathetic to others. Increase your ability to understand how others may feel. You don't have to feel bad for people, but you can recognize how it may feel and recognize how they may feel and validate that. You don't even have to agree with it to be empathetic. Maybe your friend lost their job. Maybe your friend lost their job though because they never could show up on time. And maybe they never could show up on time because they have an autoimmune disorder and it's really difficult for them to sleep, and therefore they oversleep often. And you think to yourself, well, just get up and go to work. But maybe you can also think about increasing your empathy and think, I don't know what that would be like to be sick all the time, but I can imagine that would be hard. And regardless of this person's choices, they lost their job. And that in and of itself is hard and something you could be empathetic to without necessarily excusing their behavior. You don't have to say, oh, it's not your fault, you lost your job, this is crappy. But you can say, wow, being unemployed is really difficult. I'm sorry you're going through that. It must be hard. It must not feel very good to get up every morning and know that you don't have a way to make ends meet or a way to contribute to society. And I can imagine that makes you feel pretty hopeless. And I'm really sorry you're feeling that. I feel for you. And if there's something I can do to help, I will. That's how we increase our empathy, right? We feel for other people and we recognize what they're going through, even though we may not have those same feelings or may not respond that way, but we can validate that experience for them. Pursue noble goals. It sounds fancy, but like do good things, right? I mean, think about how you can make good decisions and do things for the good of others. When we pursue noble goals, it's pointed outward, not inward. While you may benefit from doing something like community service, the goal of community service is actually others. But you may actually receive some benefit from doing it. It feels good. And that's great. Pursue great things. Make daily choices with a sense of purpose for the future. So why should you care about emotional intelligence? Why work on it at all? Who cares? Well, you don't have to, but I think it has there's a lot of good potential in being emotionally aware and having good emotional intelligence. Wanting to succeed in a leadership role. It's really difficult to manage other people and to set an example for others if you can't manage yourself, if you can't manage your own emotions. If you want to be a successful leader of an organization or of a company someday, realize that people are going to look to you. And if you're the kind of person who can't read a room, who can't be empathetic to others, who doesn't know what to say and when to say it, who can't manage their own emotions, it's going to be really difficult for you to be successful as a leader. I have a couple of friends who have said this to me, and it's one of those things that it doesn't resonate with me. As y'all probably know, I'm pretty straightforward. I think I kind of tell people how it is for the most part. However, I don't do that, generally speaking, with a lack of tact or a lack of awareness. I have some friends who say things like, well, this is who I am. This is what I do, take it or leave it. I tell people how it is. If you don't like it, tough for you. That's just me. And, I can't really relate to that. I feel like that's an extremely selfish way to think about your life. And that it's really easy. It's really easy. That's not talent. That's not a honed strength to say, oh, it's just what I do. I say what I want. I do what I want. If you don't like it, tough. That's easy. Anybody can do that. What good people do, what people with strong emotional intelligence do, is they care about others, is they lead by example, is they control their emotions for the appropriate time. They say the right thing at the right time, the right way, and that doesn't mean they're not honest. You can be honest without being brash or crude. I've never been particularly impressed by people who say things like, well, that's just how I am, take it or leave it. I say exactly what I think. Well, you know what? Congratulations. That's really not that hard. I can say what I think all day. You want to know what's hard? What's hard is showing compassion and empathy. What's hard is monitoring yourself and saying what's appropriate or polite. What's hard is getting what you want by caring for others and showing time and patience. That's hard. That's work. And so I challenge you to think about how you can work on your intelligence, your emotional intelligence. If you're trying to fit in with a new team or an organization, or you're trying to develop a new network of friends, these things are going to be really important. If you want to improve your ability to provide really good customer service, right? We all, in some form or facet, are using customer service in our jobs. All kinds of positions require customer service. It's great to have stronger emotional intelligence because you can just understand yourself better and you can understand the people you interact with on a deeper level. You would develop deeper relationships with folks when you understand yourself and show the effort to actually understand them as well. That's how you develop a deep emotional connection with others. So a few things you can do to enhance your emotional intelligence. Reflect on your own emotions. Take time daily to think about how you felt today and how you responded to those feelings. Did you experience anxiety and then lash out at people? Did you experience stress and then take a couple deep breaths and respond calmly? Ask others for perspective. Part of being emotionally intelligent is being able to take the feedback of others. Hey, in that meeting today, when so-and-so said something to me and I responded, how did that come across? What did it look like to you? Because sometimes what you want to put out there and what you're actually putting out there are not the same thing. Ask others, because perception is reality. If I think I'm being kind, but everybody else thinks I'm being a jerk, then I'm being a jerk and I need to figure it out. So ask others for their perspective on you. Be observant of your own emotions. Use a pause, sometimes thinking and taking a moment to think before you speak. And explore the why. Why would someone else think that? Why would someone else act that way? Bridge the gap between you and someone else to help see their perspective. You don't have to agree with their perspective to understand it. And I think that that's a really unfortunate route our society has taken, is that if you don't like someone else's perspective because it's not yours, you just like defriend them on Facebook or unfollow them on TikTok or Instagram or whatever, right? But really, part of becoming emotionally intelligent and aware is understanding that other people have different perspectives than yours, and those are valid. You don't have to own them, though. That can be their perspective. Exploring the why. And when criticized, don't take offense. If someone criticizes you or tells you you need to work on something, think, what can I learn from this? And you may think, I can't learn anything from this. This person isn't actually in a place to tell me about this. But if your supervisor is in a place to tell you how your customer service skills are, you need to think what you can learn from that. Now, if your supervisor who has 6 failed marriages wants to tell you how to handle your marriage, it's okay to think this may not be the right person to get some advice from, right? But practice, practice, practice. Practice your emotional intelligence. Practice reflecting on your own emotions. So thank y'all for listening today. This was a longer recording than I thought, but like I said, I find this material fascinating to think about. It's an area that everybody can use growth in all the time. It's something you can always be working towards. Make sure you've answered all the questions for this quiz, and be ready for some discussion questions as well. Thanks for listening.